Hi guys, my patience is wearing thin with Brexiteers who don't understand three things. First, they don't fully comprehend what Brexit was actually about, and therefore they didn't know what they were voting for. Second, they have zero understanding of Northern Ireland and its position in respect to the single market and why a border had to be placed in the Irish Sea. And third, they don't get the Good Friday Agreement. Here, Kay Burley of Sky News spoke to arch-Brexiteer Bernard Jenkin, who demonstrated a complete lack of understanding of all three in epic style. Have a listen to this.
The border's in the wrong place, and the border was put in the Irish Sea to try and avoid offending one community in Northern Ireland, and it finished up deeply offending another community.
It was not about offence. It was about protecting the Good Friday Agreement. Okay, let's continue.
In Northern Ireland. And you'll remember, Kay, during the negotiations, there was lots of talk about what they called alternative arrangements of having some kind of invisible north-south border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. But that was ditched because there wasn't enough time.
No. It was not about there wasn't enough time. It doesn't exist. You could have all the time in the world, but it doesn't exist. There isn't an example, a working example, that would resolve the problems that we're talking about when it comes to Brexit. Now, what am I talking about? In order to check goods, this is what Brexiteers have been talking about since 2019. All we need is an electronic border, and I've covered it before a few months ago, and I covered it about 4 years ago, when Jacob Rees-Mogg was talking about it as well. Back in 2019, Jacob Rees-Mogg was talking about, we can have this electronic border. Please tell us, how an electronic border can check if milk is respecting regulations. Please tell us how an electronic border can scan to see if contraband is in the boot of someone's car. How can an electronic border do this? It can't. There are no working examples. Now, there are electronic borders around the world, but nothing like what's necessary to deal with the problems of Brexit. And Brexiteers like this guy keep talking about we can have this invisible border. We can have this electronic border. And he goes into more detail about it, but it's nonsensical. There isn't a working example. And they don't explain where the actual infrastructure would go for this electronic border.
Well, the obvious answer is to go back to that proposal, now that we have unlimited time, and aim towards creating a customs frontier between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, but without actual checks or infrastructure at the border. And the border already has a VAT border, and we don't have VAT checks at the border. There's an excise duty border. There's different levels of excise duty each side of the border, but we don't have checks at the border to police that. There's a security border. There's actually a people border. And usually you have checkpoints at a border to stop the people that are going across that shouldn't be going across. Well, we don't even have that. So
why is there not a check on people? Because Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland and Great Britain are in the common travel area. That's why there isn't check. Now, there is actually checks on movement of people between Northern Ireland and Great Britain, and this has been going on before Brexit. If you want to take a ferry, you may have your documents checked. So you're advised to take a passport with you or some sort of ID. If you want to get on a plane and fly from Dublin to London, even before Brexit, you needed to have a passport. This was a requirement of the airlines. But this does not impact the common travel area. That means that you can get in a car, drive from Dublin to Belfast, there is no check, and somehow get from Belfast to Scotland or to Liverpool or wherever, and you won't be checked because you're within the common travel area. Now, if you're not an Irish or British citizen, you will probably be checked.
It should not be too difficult to have a customs frontier without infrastructure in a north-south border.
So you think the...
Okay, so once again, I have to come back to this. You can have some sort of border, electronic border, without infrastructure. Please explain how you can have electronic equipment without having infrastructure for that electronic equipment. Well, is it going to float in the air? Is it like some sort of drone with solar panels on it that will stay aloft for, all day long throughout the year? Is this what he's talking about? And this will be able to scan trucks as they pass underneath it, and it will be able to identify what's within that truck, what's within the boxes, if they are compliant. Absolute rubbish.
Border should be dividing the north and a north-south divide as opposed to one in the Irish Sea. What would that mean for the Good Friday Agreement?
Well, that would restore the Good Friday Agreement because
How would it restore the Good Friday Agreement? The Good Friday Agreement is being protected by the protocol. The protocol exists in order to protect the Good Friday Agreement, to make sure that there isn't infrastructure on the border. And what are you talking about now? You're talking about putting infrastructure on the border and saying, if we put infrastructure on the border, that will protect the Good Friday Agreement. But in the Good Friday Agreement, it talks about removing infrastructure. How can introducing infrastructure that doesn't exist at the moment be protecting the Good Friday Agreement? I'd love for... This is where journalism collapses, unfortunately. Why isn't Kay Burley asking him, okay, you're talking about... Has Kay Burley read the Good Friday Agreement? It's not that long. It's about 35 pages. And it says about removing infrastructure, security infrastructure. Now, if you put in an electronic border, if you have some sort of, post in the ground with a scanner on top, what will happen? Or what could happen? It could be attacked. If it gets attacked, it needs to be protected. If it needs to be protected, you need security there. You need security personnel. Where do the security personnel stay? Well, they need to stay in some sort of infrastructure.
What so offends the Unionist community in Northern Ireland, and this is by far the most important thing, as one of your speakers was saying earlier, the collapse of the Good Friday Agreement is an absolute catastrophe. Political tensions are rising.
The Good Friday Agreement has not collapsed. What are you talking about?
There's nobody objecting in Northern Ireland to the border being in a different place.
Yes, there is. What? Once again, people like these Brexiteers don't understand Northern Ireland. The people of Northern Ireland don't want a border between the Republic and Northern Ireland. And this includes Unionists. It's not just... See, when we think of Unionists, we think of the DUP. No, they're a fringe element. They're not the majority of people in Northern Ireland. They're not a majority of Unionists either. Most Unionist people, a lot of Unionist people work across the border, live across the border. Some of them live in Donegal. Some of them work in Donegal. Some of them live in Monaghan. Some of them work in Monaghan and Cavan. They don't want a hard border. And they're Unionists. In the same way... It's the DUP that want a hard border. And the DUP do not represent everyone in Northern Ireland.
Well, there being different arrangements to deal with this issue. But it deeply offends the Unionist community that this was imposed.
I'm sorry if it offends someone. We're talking about practicalities here. And if you're talking about Unionists, we're talking about the DUP once again. The DUP who campaigned and voted for Brexit. They wanted a hard border on the island of Ireland. The UK government said, we're not going to do that. So the DUP lost. They bet the farm on having a border on the island of Ireland, and they lost. They should just go away and be satisfied that they deal with this loss. Okay, You wanted something, you didn't get it, go away and be quiet. You know, the DUP should be campaigning against Brexit. They should, really, if the DUP were anyway clever, they would have supported the UK as a whole remaining within the single market and the customs union, because then there would be no need for a border anywhere. And the border, if they had been in any way intelligent, they would have understood when push comes to shove, the UK government is going to protect the UK government, and they're going to put the border in the Irish Sea. They're not going to put the border on the island of Ireland. Anyone with even a small understanding of Northern Ireland knew that. But probably Brexiteers didn't.
On them. It is a cardinal principle of the Act of Union of 1800, which binds Northern Ireland into the United Kingdom.
Northern Ireland did not exist in 1800. Northern Ireland was created in May 1921. Like, if this guy was some person just pulled off the street, it would be forgivable. This is a Conservative MP. Remember, the full name of the Conservatives is the Conservative and Unionist Party. And he believes that Northern Ireland was created in 1800. 1800. It was created in May 1921.
Is that there is one internal market for the United Kingdom. And now there is a customs frontier between the United Kingdom, between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and that separates Northern Ireland from the rest of the United Kingdom.
It doesn't separate Northern Ireland from the rest of the United Kingdom. It applies to goods, not people, not money. It only applies to goods moving from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. That's it. It offends some unionists, not all unionists, it offends some unionists, but those unionists just have to bear with that. They campaigned for Brexit. Now, this is all really interesting because Bernard Jenkin here supported all of this back in 2019. What am I talking about when I talk about back in 2019? This is what Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister, said back in 2019 about all of this. Have a listen. This is really interesting. You probably have heard this before, but I think it's important to refresh people's minds here.
Brexit is clearly a big part of your pitch. And
we can get out.
But can people trust
January
you
the 31st
when it comes to Brexit? Because last month you told businesses in Northern Ireland that they would face no forms, no checks, no barriers of any kind under your Brexit deal. And you also went on to say that if anyone asked them to fill out a form, they should phone you up personally and you'll direct them to throw that form in the bin. Well, how come then that this government document that was leaked this week says that that's not true, that there will be checks and forms? Were you telling the truth?
Yes, I am. And look at what we say in our manifesto, look what we're going to deliver. The deal that we've done with the EU...
So will there be checks?
No, absolutely not. The deal we...
There you have it. Boris Johnson in 2019 telling people in Northern Ireland there will be no checks. And now you have Brexiteers within his party complaining about the checks. And none of these Brexiteers have come out and said, why did Boris Johnson lie? Boris Johnson knew. It's not that he didn't know. Of course he knew. He knew he was lying. But we're not allowed to say that Boris Johnson is a liar for some reason. It's absurd. And what's really annoying as well is how the people of Ireland did not support Brexit. They're having it inflicted upon them, both North and South. Majority of people in Northern Ireland did not vote for Brexit, and the people of the Republic of Ireland had no choice. They didn't want Brexit. Most people on the island of Ireland are completely against the idea of Brexit. But now you have Brexiteers who don't understand Northern Ireland, don't understand the Act of Union, don't understand the Good Friday Agreement, saying, yeah, we need to put a border on the island of Ireland. We need to inflict this Brexit that they didn't want upon them. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think about all of this. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.